Hey y'all, it's Jaylon. My bad, I haven't really been posting on YouTube too much. I have been commenting and replying back to certain people and helping certain people out. And I have been working on my own emulators. I know there's been a lot of people asking me about Delta and the multiplayer, and there's actually been issues, and I've went back and tested certain things. I'm gonna have to, hit y'all up on that one at a later date. I gotta make sure I have all the information I need before I give it to y'all. And as far as my own emulators, for those who don't know or don't follow me on TikTok, I have been creating my own Game Boy emulator, which plays Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games. I'm gonna soon work on a Game Boy Advance emulator. I also have a Chip 8 emulator that I call the 8 chip, and I also have a NES emulator. Now, the NES emulator is a little bit different because I actually use an open source JavaScript file, and the thing about my emulators that's different from other people's emulators is that I'm making this to where you just have the HTML file and everything is there. And I'm gonna tell you the difference, okay? So when you go and look at certain people codes, and I actually did some research because I've been wanting people to create completely offline emulators using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, when other people do it, they always include some type of external tool, external link, or basically, something to draw from. Now, the Game Boy emulator doesn't do that. I don't need to draw from a link. I don't need to do anything. I just recreated the original hardware like the Z80 and the MCB chips and the stuff like that. And it was cool. And I actually did it, I think, like, working emulator around like 600 something lines. So, for the Game Boy emulator, for me, it's way more customizable. That's really what I aim towards. Like, there is something called emulator JavaScript, but the part I don't like about stuff like that is that you technically don't have the complete freedom. It's like the N64 emulator, online emulator. I forgot the name of it, but when you could turn that into an HTML file, but then it's just gonna download the core and everything. Now with the NES emulator, since it's just a JavaScript file, I actually made it to where it can inject it inside the code. But the problem was, once I start adding multiplayer and settings and all these different features, it just didn't want to do it anymore. So I added in a feature where it would download it to local storage, and then you don't have to do anything else. And for the Game Boy emulators and stuff, I didn't have to do that. But the reason why I'm cool and content with this is because I still have control over the emulator. I can still add features. It's not like I'm just getting something from somewhere else and then it's running. You feel me? Like, and I don't have no form of customization or anything like that. No. Once it's downloaded, I could add any feature to the emulator I want and it does it. But with these, with certain other things, you don't have that option. But with my stuff, you do have the option to customize it if you truly know what you're doing, or you use AI, or get help from somebody. So you do have the fact that you can customize my stuff. It's completely offline and you don't need internet. Now for the NES emulator, obviously you need to download it, to the local storage, and then you don't need internet. But for the Game Boy, the Chip 8, you don't need anything. And hopefully for the Game Boy Advance, I can do the same thing to where you don't need anything. And maybe I could figure out a way on the NES. Like, and I ain't gonna lie, I think what happened with the NES was that the fact that it was already there and that it was just one file and that was all I needed. I think I was cool with that versus like the Game Boy Advance or the Game Boy where you might need multiple links to something. But maybe there's a link to a Game Boy or a Gameboycolor thing somewhere, the data and everything, and I just didn't find it when I was researching, or I just forgot about it. I probably did see something like that and just chose not to use it, but I did that because I knew for a fact I could recreate the Game Boy. I knew for a fact that it was possible, and I knew that it could be done. But with the NES, I just wasn't sure. But when I saw that it was already right there, I'm like, well, at some point I was going to have to use, because I'm already use open source information anyways to create all of this, because I have to do the research before I make these emulators. But I'm just like, look, it's already there. It's right there. Let me see what I can do if there's a way for me to just have it injected. And let me see if I can do it, throughout the entire project instead of it just working at the beginning. So I think that'd be my workaround for when I can't create a completely offline one, but it's definitely possible. I ain't gonna fake, it's definitely possible, but the reason why I think it's so difficult to get it like in the code is because of the way so it's a link to the JavaScript code, right? But the JavaScript code looks like it's been compressed already. So like for those, I'm pretty sure y'all know what I'm talking about. You know, when you write a HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code, like they're kind of spaced out a little bit. But when you compress it, you kind of squeeze it together a little bit. And I think that's how the JavaScript file already is. So when you try to inject it, it just makes it even more difficult to do that. I know it sounds kind of weird to some people, but I think it'll be some people out there who understand exactly what I'm talking about. But it does get kind of weird when you do something like that. But I'm just letting y'all know what I've been doing because I haven't really been posting on YouTube like I should. But yeah, I've been making some emulators. I've been making some games. I've been making some more tools. I've been doing a lot of stuff. So I recommend you follow my TikTok. I'm going to leave a Dropbox link. I'm going to leave some links to some other stuff that you guys might enjoy. You probably seeing like some gameplay in the background of the emulators like the NES and the Game Boy. So just showing y'all and letting y'all know, as far as the Game Boy emulator, it runs most games, but it does not run every game. So I do need to fix games like Shantae and a couple of others like Rayman. And I have fixed some. Like at first it didn't run Legend of Zelda. I know. But I got it working. So with the part about emulators that I think some people really don't like is that you like, for I ain't gonna fake, and I've even watched YouTube videos where they done told me the same thing. I think it gets to a point where you have to like manually make everything compatible. And with me, I try to make the best, or I shouldn't say best, but the best, the most known, and like the more difficult games, you know, to be compatible with the emulator, because that makes it way easier for other games to be compatible. So I'm gonna get games like Shantae and Rayman compatible. And if I have to go through the entire Game Boy library and the entire Gameboycolor library and actually manually add, you know, support for all of them, which I won't have to do, because obviously once I fix certain things, it'll get to a point where it'll run everything. But I'm just saying, if I have to keep going through manual, you know, games that are difficult to run on there or require certain stuff that other games might require, I'd be willing to do that. I ain't got no problem with it. I have zero problem with doing that because I'm making my own emulator. I want it to work. And yeah, it might run popular games, but what if somebody got a game that, you know, they really enjoy and it just don't work on my stuff? You feel me? Nah, I ain't gonna have it like that. Also, just in case anybody was wondering, on the NES, there is multiplayer in the NES emulator, not in the Game Boy emulator. I have to see how I'm gonna go about that. But in the NES emulator, it's basically made to replicate like in-person experience. So let's say, for example, you have a laptop, you plug the laptop, the HDMI into the TV, you would connect a controller to the laptop, and then you would connect a phone to the laptop, because you know you can do the multiplayer. It's gonna use pure JavaScript to give you a 6-digit code. You use that 6-digit code to connect the phone to the computer. You connect another controller to the phone via Bluetooth, because you can do that. PS5, Xbox One, PS4 controller, doesn't matter. As long as it's not, you know, before that. But you get what I'm saying. Doesn't matter which one of those three you use. And then from then it should work. Once you insert a game, so on the phone screen, it'll actually give you an on-screen controller. So just in case you don't have a controller, you can use on-screen controls. And then you just go to multiplayer once you insert the game on the whole screen, and everything should be cool. And you can just play directly from the TV. Feel me? That's how I made it to be. I think that's all the information I can give y'all for right now. I don't know how y'all New Year been. I hope it been good. You know, it's been a lot of crazy stuff already going on 2026. Please stay safe out there. Please do you. Please stay on the grind. Please don't let nobody deter you from anything that you want to do.